The champagne was expensive, the kind that tasted like liquid gold and cost more than most people's monthly rent. I held the flute loosely in my hand, watching my husband of 8 years stand on the stage of the downtown conference hall, accepting an award for Innovation Entrepreneur of the Year. I couldn't have done this without the support of my incredible team, Marcus said into the microphone, his voice warm and confident. And of course, my business partner and co-founder, Vanessa Wright, who believed in this vision from day one. Vanessa stepped forward, stunning in a red dress that probably cost as much as the champagne. She kissed Marcus on the cheek, lingering just a second too long, and the audience of 300 tech industry professionals erupted in applause. I took a sip of champagne. It tasted like ashes. "Your wife seems very supportive," a voice said beside me. I turned to see an older woman, perhaps in her 60s, watching the stage with sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore a simple black suit that screamed old money and power. "I try to be," I said, keeping my voice steady. Most women would be upset, watching their husband give credit to another woman for something they funded. She looked at me directly. "But you don't seem upset at all. Why would I be upset?" I smiled, and it felt like ice on my lips. He's right. Vanessa did believe in the vision from day one. She believed in it enough to sleep with him while I paid for everything. The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "And yet you're still here, smiling." "I'm here because I believe in seeing things through to the end." I finished my champagne. And this is just the beginning of the end. On stage, Marcus was talking about the revolutionary software his company TechVance Solutions had developed. An artificial intelligence platform that could predict market trends with 94% accuracy. A platform that was about to make him very, very rich. A platform whose patent listed me, Dr. Eloise Kensington Foster, as the sole inventor. But he didn't know that yet. The woman beside me smiled slowly. "I like you. I'm Helen Cortez, by the way. I invest in interesting people." "Eloise Foster," I said, shaking her hand. "I know who you are, Dr. Foster. MIT graduate, PhD in computer science and applied mathematics, formerly a senior researcher at quantum analytics. Your work on predictive algorithms is legendary in certain circles. That was a long time ago. 5 years isn't that long. Why did you leave?" I looked back at the stage, where Marcus and Vanessa were now posing for photographs, his arm around her waist in a way that was far too comfortable, far too familiar. "Because my husband asked me to," I said. "He said he needed me to focus on supporting his dreams instead of chasing my own. He said one successful career in the family was enough. He said he loved me." "And you believed him?" "I did." For a while, I set down my empty champagne flute. Then I started noticing things. Late nights that turned into overnight trips. Lipstick on his collar that wasn't my shade. Texts from Vanessa at 2 a.m. about breakthrough ideas. Helen nodded slowly. "How long have you known about the affair?" 8 months. "About them stealing my research to build their company?" 6 months. "About them planning to push me out entirely and get a divorce once the company went public?" "About 3 months. "That's very specific." "I'm very thorough." Marcus was walking off the stage now, Vanessa's hand in his, heading toward the VIP section where investors and industry leaders waited to congratulate him. He glanced toward me briefly, and I raised my hand in a small wave. He smiled and nodded, then turned his attention back to Vanessa and the crowd of admirers. He had no idea that his entire world was about to collapse. "What are you going to do?" Helen asked. "I'm going to do what I should have done 5 years ago," I said. "I'm going to reclaim everything that's mine." The revenge had been months in the making. While Marcus and Vanessa thought I was just the quiet, supportive wife who'd given up her career to be a homemaker, I'd been systematically documenting everything. Every email where Marcus asked for my technical advice. Every night I spent coding while he slept. Every breakthrough I explained to him that he then presented as his own work. Every dollar of my inheritance money he used to fund the startup, promising it was our company, our future. I had proof of all of it. But more importantly, I had something they didn't know about. When Marcus had asked me to file the patent application for the AI platform because I was the one with the technical expertise to write it properly, I'd done exactly that. But I'd filed it under my name only, as the sole inventor. Because I was the sole inventor. Every line of code, every algorithm, every innovation that made TechVan's solutions valuable was mine. Marcus thought he owned it because the company was in his name. He'd used my money to fund it, then systematically excluded me from any official role, introducing me at industry events as just my wife while Vanessa got to be the co-founder. They thought I was too trusting, too naive, too focused on being a good wife to notice what they were doing. They were wrong. The patent office lists you as the inventor, Helen said quietly. I checked when I saw the award announcement. Marcus Foster and Vanessa Wright are listed as the company founders, but the core technology patent belongs to you alone. You did your homework. I always do, Dr. Foster. I'd like to invest in whatever you're planning next. I looked at her. This woman I'd just met who somehow understood exactly what was happening. You don't even know what I'm planning. I know enough. I know you're brilliant. I know you've been betrayed by people who underestimated you. And I know that when brilliant people are underestimated, they do exceptional things. She pulled a business card from her purse. Call me when you're ready. I have resources that could be useful. I took the card. Why are you helping me? Because 30 years ago, I was you. A smart woman who gave up everything for a man who took credit for my work. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd built an empire on my ideas and left me with nothing. She smiled, but it was cold. I've spent 3 decades making sure other women don't make the same mistake. Consider this an investment in justice. Marcus was heading toward me now, working the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. Vanessa was at his side, playing the perfect business partner. They looked like the golden couple of the tech world, handsome, successful, unstoppable. They had no idea they'd already lost. Eloise, Marcus said, reaching me with a broad smile. There you are. What did you think? Pretty amazing, right? Very impressive, I said. You must be so proud. I am. We've come so far. He glanced at Vanessa, and something passed between them. Something intimate and secret. I wish you could have been more involved in building this, but you understand. Someone had to keep the home front stable. Someone had to sacrifice their career and their dreams, so you could pretend my work was yours, I thought. But I just smiled. I understand perfectly. Oh, you haven't met Vanessa properly yet, have you? Marcus said, putting his hand on Vanessa's back. Vanessa, this is my wife, Eloise. Eloise, this is Vanessa Wright, my business partner. Vanessa extended her hand, her smile bright and fake. So nice to finally meet you properly. Marcus talks about you all the time. I bet he does, I thought. I bet he tells you how naive I am, how trusting, how easy to manipulate. It's nice to meet you, too, I said, shaking her hand. Marcus has told me so much about your contributions to the company. Well, we're a team, she said, moving closer to Marcus. We work very well together. I can see that. An investor approached, wanting to discuss potential funding rounds, and Marcus excused himself, pulling Vanessa with him. He didn't ask me to join them. He never did. I was just the wife, not important enough to be part of the real conversations. Helen appeared beside me again. You're remarkably calm. Anger is only useful if it drives action, I said. Random anger is just noise. I prefer signal to noise. When does this signal become action? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., when the lawyers deliver the cease and desist letters to Marcus and Vanessa, informing them that they're using patented technology without the patent holder's permission. Helen smiled. That's going to be quite a morning. That's just the opening move, I said. The real game starts after that. I left the award ceremony early, claiming a headache. Marcus barely noticed, too busy networking and celebrating with Vanessa. I took a taxi home to our overpriced apartment in the city paid for with my inheritance money, though the lease was only in Marcus's name, because he'd said it would be better for his credit. Everything was in his name, everything except the one thing that actually mattered. I'd been so stupid, so trusting, so convinced that love meant sacrifice, that a good wife supported her husband's dreams even at the expense of her own. But that stupidity had ended 6 months ago, the night I found Marcus and Vanessa together in our bed. 6 months earlier, I'd come home early from a dinner with my college roommate, Priya. She'd been visiting from Boston, and we'd spent the evening catching up over Thai food and too much wine. I'd taken an earlier train than planned, eager to get home and sleep off the alcohol. The apartment was dark when I walked in. Marcus had said he was working late at the office, something about a crucial deadline for a potential investor meeting. I'd believed him, like I always did. I went to the bedroom to change, opened the door, and found my husband in bed with Vanessa. They didn't notice me at first. They were too engrossed in each other. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, watching the wreckage of my marriage play out in real time, feeling something inside me crack and then go completely cold. Then I closed the door quietly and left. I didn't scream, didn't throw things, didn't confront them. I just walked out of the apartment, got back on the train, and went to a hotel. That's when the anger came. Not hot and explosive, but ice cold and calculating. I sat in that hotel room until dawn, thinking about my life, my choices, my stupidity. I'd given up everything for Marcus. My career at Quantum Analytics, where I'd been on track to become the youngest senior researcher in the company's history. My own startup plans. My research into advanced predictive algorithms that could have made me independently successful. All of it sacrificed because Marcus had said he needed me. Because he'd made me believe that supporting him was the same as building our future together. But he'd been lying. Maybe not from the beginning, but somewhere along the way his love had curdled into something else. Convenience. Exploitation. A relationship where I provided the money and the brains while he provided the charisma and took the credit. And Vanessa, beautiful, ambitious Vanessa, who Marcus had introduced to me as his new business partner 2 years ago, had been sleeping with him for who knows how long, probably since the beginning of the company. Maybe even before. I didn't go home the next morning. I went to a lawyer. I need to know my options, I told Patricia Hamilton, a divorce attorney Priya had recommended. Patricia was in her 50s, with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen every possible variation of marriage falling apart. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I told her about giving up my career, about my inheritance money funding Marcus's startup, about the apartment being in his name, the company being in his name, everything being structured so that legally, on paper, I had nothing. Did you sign a prenuptial agreement? Patricia asked. No. Marcus said he didn't believe in them. He said they showed a lack of trust. Patricia's expression suggested she'd heard that line 1,000 times. What about the company? Are you listed anywhere as a founder or investor? No. Marcus said it would be better if I wasn't officially involved, for tax purposes. He promised me I'd own half of everything once the company went public. Promised verbally? Yes. Nothing in writing? Nothing. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Foster, I'm going to be blunt with you. Based on what you've told me, if you divorce him now, you'll get very little. The apartment is in his name. The company is in his name. Your inheritance money was given freely, not as a loan. Unless we can prove fraud or misrepresentation, you're looking at a standard divorce settlement, maybe half the apartment value, some spousal support for a few years. But the company, the real value, you won't touch that. Even though I funded it? Even though it's his company legally? You'd need to prove you were a partner, in fact, if not in name, and that's very difficult without documentation. I sat there absorbing this information. I'd been so trusting, so focused on being supportive, that I'd signed away my rights without even realizing it. Is there anything I can do? I asked. Patricia thought for a moment. Do you have any intellectual property claims? Did you contribute to the technology the company uses? I wrote most of it. Can you prove that? I have all my working files, timestamps, emails where Marcus asked me technical questions, and I provided the answers he then used. That's good. What about patents? Is the technology patented? Marcus asked me to file the patent application last year. He said I was the only one who understood it well enough to write the technical specifications properly. And did you? Yes. Whose name is on the patent? That's when I realized. I pulled out my phone and logged into the patent office database, found the application I'd filed 14 months ago, read through it carefully, and saw my name. Just my name. As the sole inventor. I think I made a mistake, I said slowly. When I filed the patent application, Patricia looked at the screen. Her expression changed. Mrs. Foster, that's not a mistake, that's leverage. We spent the next hour going through my options. If I owned the patent to the core technology that made TechVance Solutions valuable, I had power. Real power. but I had to be strategic about how I used it. Don't tell your husband yet, Patricia advised. Don't confront him about the affair. Don't mention the patent. Don't do anything that might alert him that you know what's happening. We need time to build an ironclad case. How much time? At least 3 months. Maybe 6. We need to document everything. Prove your intellectual contributions to the company. Establish that the patent filing wasn't a mistake but an accurate reflection of who actually invented the technology. And we need to wait until the company is valuable enough that losing the patent would destroy them. They're about to close a Series B funding round, I said. $20 million. The deal is contingent on them owning the IP outright. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Then we wait until right after the funding closes. Let them get the money. Let them think they've won. And then we take everything. I left Patricia's office that day with a plan. A long, careful, methodical plan that required me to keep living with Marcus, to keep pretending I didn't know about Vanessa, to keep playing the role of the supportive, clueless wife. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I went home that evening. Marcus was there, looking guilty but trying to hide it. "Where were you last night?" he asked. "I came home and you weren't here." "I stayed at Priya's," I lied smoothly. "We had too much to drink and I didn't want to take the train home late. I texted you." "Oh, right. I must have missed it." He hugged me, and it took everything in me not to flinch. "I missed you. I missed you too." That's how it started. 6 months of lying, pretending, documenting. 6 months of watching him come home from long days supposedly at the office, knowing he'd been with Vanessa. 6 months of listening to him talk about his company, his breakthrough technology, his success. I smiled and nodded and played the perfect wife while systematically building the case that would destroy him. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar of my inheritance money that went into the company. I hired a private investigator to document Marcus and Vanessa's affair. I worked with Patricia to gather evidence of my intellectual contributions, every email, every text, every documented conversation where I solved the technical problems that made the company possible. And I made copies of everything, every file on Marcus's computer related to the company, every piece of source code I'd written, every algorithm I'd developed. I stored it all in encrypted cloud drives, gave copies to Patricia, made sure that even if Marcus tried to delete evidence, we'd have backups. But the most important thing I did was nothing. I did nothing to alert him that I knew. I kept cooking his dinners, doing his laundry, attending company events as the smiling, supportive wife. I even had coffee with Vanessa once, listening to her talk about how exciting it was to build a company with Marcus, how they worked so well together, how grateful she was for his genius. "He's special," she said, and I couldn't tell if she was deliberately taunting me or if she genuinely thought I was too stupid to see what was happening. "He is," I agreed. "You're lucky to work with him." "We're all lucky," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "You especially. Not many women are married to someone who's going to change the world." I wanted to tell her that I was the one changing the world, that Marcus was just the face taking credit, but I smiled and nodded and let her think she'd won. The hardest part was the loneliness. I couldn't tell anyone what was happening. Priya knew I was having marriage problems, but I didn't tell her the extent of it. My parents were retired in Florida, and I didn't want to worry them until everything was settled. Patricia was professional, but not a friend. So I was alone with my anger, my plans, my carefully hidden fury. At night, after Marcus fell asleep, and some nights he didn't even come home, claiming emergency work meetings that we both knew were really hotel rooms with Vanessa, I worked. I refined the algorithms that made the AI platform valuable. I documented every improvement I made. I added features that only I understood. Backdoors that would make it impossible for anyone else to fully utilize the technology even if they had access to the code. I made myself irreplaceable while making sure Marcus and Vanessa thought I was irrelevant. And I waited. The Series B funding closed 3 weeks ago. $20 million, valuing TechVant Solutions at $80 million total. Marcus and Vanessa celebrated with champagne and plans for rapid expansion. They'd already started talking about a Series C round, about going public within 2 years, about becoming billionaires. Marcus came home that night drunk and happy, talking about our future. "This is going to change everything for us, Eloise," he said. "All the sacrifice, all the hard work, it's going to pay off. We're going to be rich." "That's wonderful," I said. I was thinking, maybe once the company goes public, we could start trying for kids. Would you like that? I looked at him. This man I'd loved and trusted, who was planning to have children with me while sleeping with his business partner, who was already planning to divorce me once the company's value was secured but was still keeping up the pretense. "I'd like that," I lied. "Good. Because I want to build a family with you. A real future. A real future. With my money, my work, my sacrifice, while he shared the credit and the wealth with Vanessa." That's when I decided I was done waiting. "Marcus," I said carefully, "I was thinking about the patent filing I did last year, for the AI platform." His expression shifted slightly. "What about it? I just want to make sure everything's in order. For the investors. They're going to want to verify that the company owns all the IP, right?" "Of course. Why?" "No reason. I just want to make sure I filed everything correctly." "You did fine," he said, but there was something in his voice now. A note of concern. "Why are you asking about this, just being thorough? I know how important it is. Eloise, you don't need to worry about company things. That's my job. You just focus on, home stuff. Home stuff." Like I was a child who couldn't understand business. "Of course," I said. "You're right." But I saw the worry in his eyes. The sudden realization that maybe, possibly, he should have checked the patent filing himself instead of just trusting me to put his name on it. Too late, Marcus. Too late. The next morning, I woke up early, dressed carefully in one of my old business suits from my quantum analytics days, and left the apartment before Marcus woke up. I had a meeting scheduled with Patricia and a patent attorney she'd brought in as a specialist. The attorney's name was Kenneth Park, and he was renowned for intellectual property cases. He'd reviewed all my documentation, all my evidence, all the proof that I was the actual inventor of the technology TechVance Solutions claimed as theirs. "This is clear-cut," Kenneth said, spreading documents across the conference table. "You filed the patent application. You're listed as the sole inventor. You have documented proof of creating the algorithms and code. There's no question that you own this patent. Can Marcus contest it?" I asked. "He can try. He could claim that you filed incorrectly, that he should have been listed as a co-inventor. But that would require him to prove he made substantial intellectual contributions to the invention. Based on your evidence, he can't do that. He might have had the business idea, but you created the actual technology. What's our timeline?" Patricia asked. "We can file the cease and desist letters today. We should also file for a preliminary injunction preventing TechVance Solutions from using the technology until ownership is settled. That will effectively shut down the company's operations." I thought about that. Shutting down the company would hurt Marcus and Vanessa, but it would also hurt the employees, the investors who'd just put in $20 million, the clients who depended on the platform. "Is there another way?" I asked. "Something that doesn't immediately destroy the company?" Kenneth and Patricia exchanged glances. "You could offer to license the patent to the company," Kenneth said. "Let them continue operating while you negotiate terms. But Eloise, that would mean working with Marcus, negotiating with him. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared for whatever's necessary." "There's another option," Patricia said. "You could demand to be bought out. Claim your fair share of the company in exchange for assigning the patent to the corporate entity. Given that you funded the startup and created the core technology, you'd have a strong case for at least 50% ownership. What would that look like?" "We'd demand recognition as a co-founder. Equity shares equal to Marcus's stake. Back payment for your intellectual contributions and the investment of your inheritance. Essentially, we'd force them to acknowledge that you built this company as much as Marcus did." I thought about seeing my name on the company website. Being introduced as the co-founder and chief technology officer, having the industry recognize that I'd been the brains behind TechVance Solutions all along. It was tempting, but it wasn't enough. "What if I want the whole thing?" I asked. Both attorneys looked at me. "The whole company?" Kenneth said. "Marcus used my money to fund it. I created the technology that makes it valuable. He's committed fraud by claiming sole ownership of my work. Why should I settle for half when he took everything from me? Patricia leaned forward. Going for full ownership would be difficult. Marcus is the CEO. He's built relationships with investors and clients. Even if you own the patent, he could argue that the company's value comes from more than just the technology. But without the technology, the company has no value, I said. That's true. So we leverage that. We offer him a choice. Either he gives me full ownership of the company, or I shut it down completely and he's left with nothing but debt and angry investors. Kenneth whistled softly. That's aggressive. Is it legal? It's legally defensible. You'd be exercising your rights as the patent holder. But Eloise, you need to understand the implications. This isn't just about Marcus. This affects Vanessa, the employees, the investors. Some of them might fight back. Let them fight. I have the law on my side. You also have the truth on your side, Patricia said, which is powerful. But truth doesn't always win in court, especially when the other side has money for good lawyers. I have money for good lawyers too. My inheritance wasn't just what I gave to Marcus. I kept a significant portion in my own accounts. This was true. I hadn't been completely stupid. When my grandmother died and left me $3 million, I'd given Marcus $1.5 million for the startup, but I'd kept the rest. He didn't know about those accounts. I'd been taught by my grandmother never to tell anyone, including a spouse, about all my money. That advice had seemed paranoid at the time. Now it seemed prophetic. If you want to pursue full ownership, we can, Kenneth said. But we need to be strategic. We start with the cease and desist. Establish your ownership of the patent. Then we negotiate from a position of strength. We don't demand everything immediately, we let them panic. Let them realize the full extent of their vulnerability. And then we present our terms. How long will this take? Months. Maybe a year. Patent disputes are complex. I can wait. I've been waiting for 6 months already. We spent the next several hours going over strategy, preparing documents, planning every move. By the time I left the law office, it was late afternoon. I had missed several calls from Marcus. I called him back. Sorry, I was at lunch with Priya and left my phone in the car. Where are you? I need to talk to you about something. I'll be home in an hour. No, I mean I need to talk to you seriously. About us. My heart rate increased slightly. Okay. What about? Not on the phone. Come home. Please. I took a taxi back to the apartment, preparing myself. Was he going to tell me about Vanessa? Ask for a divorce? Confess something? Marcus was waiting in the living room when I arrived. He looked nervous, which wasn't like him. Marcus was always confident, always sure of himself. What's wrong? I asked, setting down my purse. Eloise, I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. The patent for the AI platform. The one you filed last year. Did you put both our names on it? Or just yours? There it was. The moment of truth. I could lie, buy myself more time, or I could tell the truth and watch his world start to crumble. I chose truth. Just mine, I said calmly. His face went pale. Why? Because I'm the inventor. The patent office requires you to list the actual inventors. You didn't invent the technology, Marcus. I did. But the company we need to own that patent, the investors, they think we own it. If they find out that you lied about who invented your core technology? Yes, that would be bad. I didn't lie. I just assumed when you filed it. I thought. He ran his hands through his hair. Eloise, this is serious. This could destroy the company. I know. You know? What does that mean? Are you? He stopped, staring at me. Are you doing this on purpose? Doing what on purpose? Filing an accurate patent application? Don't play games with me. Did you know this would be a problem? I could have kept lying. Could have pretended it was an innocent mistake. But I was tired of pretending. Yes, I said. I knew. The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. Why? Marcus finally asked. Why do you think? Eloise? I don't have time for riddles. The company just raised $20 million. We have obligations to investors. If there's a problem with the patent ownership, we need to fix it now. There's no problem with the patent ownership. It's very clear. I own it. But you'll assign it to the company, right? You'll transfer ownership? Why would I do that? Marcus stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Because it's my company. Because I built this. You built it with my money. My work. My sacrifice. Our money. Our work. No, Marcus. My money. My work. You just took credit for it. He stepped closer to me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Real fear. What are you saying? I'm saying that I know everything. I know about you and Vanessa. I know you've been planning to divorce me once the company goes public. I know you've been stealing my intellectual property and passing it off as your own. I know all of it. How long have you known? Long enough. Eloise, listen to me. No, you listen to me. I kept my voice calm, level. For 5 years, I supported you. I gave up my career, my research, my dreams. I funded your startup with my inheritance. I solved every technical problem you brought home. I wrote the code that makes your company valuable. And what did you give me in return? Lies. Betrayal. A mistress in our bed. That was one time. Don't insult me by lying. I have documentation of your affair going back at least 18 months. Hotel receipts, text messages, everything. Marcus sank down onto the couch. What do you want? What do I want? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. I want what you took from me. My dignity, my career, my life. I never took your life. You took 5 years of it. 5 years I spent supporting you while you betrayed me. So what? This is revenge. You're going to destroy the company because you're angry about Vanessa? This isn't about Vanessa. This is about you thinking I was too stupid, too trusting, too focused on being a good wife to notice what you were doing. This is about you systematically stealing my work and claiming it as your own. This is about you using my money to build something you never intended to share with me. That's not true. I always planned to share everything with you. Really? Then why is nothing in my name? Why am I not listed as a founder? Why do you introduce me as just your wife at industry events while Vanessa gets to be your partner? He didn't have an answer for that. Tomorrow morning, I said, you're going to receive a cease and desist letter from my attorney. You and Vanessa and TechVance Solutions are using patented technology without permission from the patent holder. You'll be required to stop using the technology immediately unless you can reach a licensing agreement with me. You can't do this. The investors should have done their due diligence. They should have verified that you actually owned the IP you claimed to own. That's not my problem. Eloise, please. Be reasonable. We can work this out. I am being reasonable. I'm claiming what's legally mine. What do you want? Money? Equity in the company? Just tell me what you want and we'll make it happen. I looked at him. This man I'd loved and trusted, who was now bargaining with me like I was a hostile investor rather than his wife. I want you to feel what I felt, I said. I want you to wake up and realize that everything you thought was yours is actually gone. I want you to understand what it's like to be used and discarded. So, this is revenge. No, this is justice. There's a difference. I went to our bedroom and started packing a bag. Marcus followed me, still trying to negotiate, to manipulate, to find some angle that would work. Where are you going? Hotel. I've already signed a lease on a new apartment, but I don't move in until next week. You don't have to leave. Yes, I do. I can't stay here. I can't look at you anymore, Eloise. I love you. I made mistakes, I know, but I love you. I stopped packing and turned to face him. You don't love me, Marcus. You love what I could do for you. You loved having a smart wife who made you look good and solved your problems. You loved my money, but you never loved me, the person. If you had, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did. That's not fair. No, it's not fair. Nothing about this situation is fair, but I'm done caring about fair. I'm caring about what I deserve. And what do you deserve? Everything you promised me. Everything you took from me. Everything you tried to steal. I finished packing and headed for the door. Marcus grabbed my arm. Not roughly, but firmly enough to stop me. Please, he said, don't do this. We can fix this. I'll end things with Vanessa. I'll put your name on the company. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't destroy everything we've built. Everything I built I corrected. And it's too late, Marcus. You can't fix this. You can't apologize your way out of it. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. I pulled my arm free and walked out of the apartment, leaving behind 8 years of marriage and 5 years of lies. The hotel room was clean and impersonal, the kind of place where business people stayed temporarily while their lives were in transition. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my business suit, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back for months. Anger, betrayal, pain, loss, but also satisfaction, power, control. For 6 months, I'd been playing a role, pretending to be the naive wife while secretly preparing my revenge. It had been exhausting, maintaining that facade, lying to the man I slept next to every night. But now I was done pretending. Now the real work began. My phone rang. Marcus, of course. I didn't answer. He called 3 more times, then sent a series of increasingly desperate texts. Please talk to me. We can work this out. Don't let lawyers get involved. Think about what you're doing. I love you. I deleted them without responding. Then Vanessa called. That was interesting. I considered ignoring her too, but curiosity won. Hello, Vanessa. Eloise. Hi. Marcus told me about the situation. The situation where you've been sleeping with my husband for 18 months while I funded the company you're both running? Silence. Or did he leave that part out? I continued. Did he just tell you that there's a problem with the patent? Eloise, we didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean to have an affair? How does that work exactly? Did you accidentally end up in bed together? Multiple times? I'm not going to apologize for falling in love with him. I don't want your apology, Vanessa. I want you to understand something. You and Marcus thought you were so clever, thought you were building something together while I was too stupid and domestic to notice. But you weren't clever. You were sloppy. And now you're going to lose everything you thought you'd won. You can't do this. The company has investors, employees. You'll hurt a lot of people. I'm not hurting anyone. You and Marcus hurt people when you stole my work and built a company on lies. I'm just correcting the record. We didn't steal anything. Marcus built that company from the ground up, with my money, my algorithms, my code, my problem solving. Marcus is good at selling and networking, but he didn't build anything. He just put his name on what I created. That's not how he tells it. I'm sure it's not. Marcus is very good at rewriting history to make himself the hero. But you'll learn that about him eventually. Once you're not useful anymore, once there's someone else who can give him what he needs, he'll discard you too. He loves me. He said he loved me too. For 8 years. Right up until the moment it was more convenient to betray me. Vanessa hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling nothing for her. She'd chosen to have an affair with a married man. She'd chosen to help Marcus steal my work. She didn't get sympathy. The next morning, I woke early and went for a run in the hotel gym. Physical exercise helped clear my mind, helped me focus on what came next instead of dwelling on what had already happened. By 8 a.m., I was showered, dressed, and having breakfast in the hotel restaurant when my phone buzzed with an email from Patricia. Cease and desist letters delivered. Expect response soon. Expect response soon turned out to be an understatement. By 9:30, Marcus had called 7 times. Vanessa had called twice, and I'd received emails from 3 different attorneys, 2 representing Marcus and TechVance Solutions, 1 representing Vanessa personally. The messages were all variations on the same theme. We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Let's resolve this professionally. I forwarded everything to Patricia and Kenneth without responding. At 11 a.m., I had a meeting scheduled with Helen Cortez, the investor I'd met at the awards ceremony. She'd called the previous evening after seeing news reports about TechVance Solutions Series B funding, suggesting we meet to discuss opportunities. I met her at an upscale cafe in the financial district. She was already there when I arrived, drinking espresso and reading something on her tablet. Dr. Foster, she said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for the invitation. And please, call me Eloise. We sat down, and Helen got straight to business. I've done my research since we talked. Your work at Quantum Analytics was groundbreaking. Your doctoral dissertation on predictive algorithms was cited in over 200 papers. You had offers from 3 different tech giants before you suddenly quit to support your husband's startup. That's accurate. Why did you quit? Really? Marcus asked me to. He said it would be better for our marriage if I wasn't competing with him professionally. He said he needed me to focus on supporting his dreams for a while, and then later, once his company was successful, I could return to my career. Did you believe him? I wanted to. I loved him. And I was raised to believe that a good wife supports her husband. That's a very old-fashioned view. My parents are old-fashioned people. They've been married 45 years. My father worked. My mother stayed home. It worked for them, so I thought maybe it could work for me too. But it didn't. No. Because my father never stole my mother's work and passed it off as his own. He never slept with his business partner in their bed. The old-fashioned model requires both people to actually respect and care for each other. Marcus just saw me as a resource to exploit. Helen nodded. I want to invest in you. In me? I don't have a company. Not yet. But you will. You own the patent to the most valuable predictive AI technology in the market. You have the expertise to build on that technology and create something even better. And from what I've seen, you have the intelligence and strategic thinking to run a successful company. I've never been a CEO. Neither had Marcus before TechVance. And look how well he's done by stealing your work and taking credit for your innovations. Imagine what you could do actually using your own name. I thought about that. Starting my own company. Being the founder and CEO. Building something that was genuinely mine instead of supporting someone else's dream. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. What are you proposing? I asked. I'll provide seed funding. $5 million to start. You launch a company built on your AI technology. You hire your own team. You build something that makes TechVance Solutions look like a high school science project. And what do you get? 20% equity. Board seat. First refusal on future funding rounds. That's very generous. I'm not being generous. I'm being smart. You're about to be very publicly vindicated in your patent dispute with Marcus. The tech industry is going to realize that Marcus Foster didn't build TechVance, you did. Every company that passed on investing in you 5 years ago is going to regret it. Your name will have value. I want to invest in that value before it becomes too expensive. You're betting on me. I'm betting on justice, and on smart women who've been underestimated. We spent the next 2 hours discussing details, strategy, timeline. By the time I left that meeting, I had the framework for a business plan and a potential path forward that didn't involve destroying Marcus's company, just making it obsolete. When I got back to the hotel, there were 12 new messages from Marcus, 6 from Vanessa, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I listened to that one first. Mrs. Foster, this is Timothy Brennan from Lighthouse Venture Capital. We were one of the lead investors in TechVance Solutions Series B round. I'd like to discuss the current situation regarding the patent ownership. Please call me at your earliest convenience. So the investors were getting involved. That made sense. They just put $20 million into a company that apparently didn't own its core technology. I called Patricia. The investors are reaching out. I expected they would. Don't talk to them directly. Send them to me and Kenneth. We don't want you saying anything that could be used against you later. What are they going to do? Probably try to broker a deal. They want to protect their investment. If TechVance can't use the technology, their $20 million is worthless. They'll push for you to license the patent to the company or sell it outright. And if I don't want to do either of those things, then they'll have to decide if they want to fight you in court, which would be expensive and uncertain, or write off their investment as a loss. Would they really walk away from $20 million? They might. Especially if they think the company has no value without your technology. Venture capitalists are used to losses. They take big risks knowing that some investments will fail. The question is whether they think TechVance can survive without your patent. It can't, I said. The entire platform is built on my algorithms. Marcus understands the business side, but he has no idea how the actual technology works. Then they're in a difficult position, and that gives you leverage. That evening, I had dinner with Priya, who'd driven down from Boston when I texted her that I'd left Marcus. I knew something was wrong. she said over Thai food, the same restaurant where we'd had dinner the night I found Marcus and Vanessa together. You've been different for months. Quieter. More withdrawn. I couldn't tell you what was happening. I couldn't risk Marcus finding out that I knew. You've been planning this for 6 months? Eloise? That's incredibly calculating. Is that a bad thing? No. It's just not like you. You've always been so honest, so straightforward. This level of strategic deception, it's almost scary. I had to be scary. Marcus and Vanessa were stealing my life. I couldn't just confront them and hope they'd do the right thing. I had to protect myself. Priya reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. I know that sounds weird, but I am. A lot of women would have just walked away and tried to move on. You're fighting back. I don't know if fighting back is the right term. I'm just claiming what's mine. That's fighting back. And Marcus deserves it. He always seemed too smooth to me. Too charming. I never quite trusted him. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have listened? You were in love with him. You wanted to believe he was this amazing guy who was going to change the world. I was stupid. You were trusting. There's a difference. You loved him and you believed in him. That's not stupid. That's human. We finished dinner and Priya drove me back to my hotel. Where are you going to live? She asked. You can't stay in a hotel forever. I signed a lease on an apartment. Small place, nothing fancy, but it's mine. Just in my name. I move in next week. Do you need help? I don't have much to move. I left almost everything at the apartment with Marcus. You didn't take anything? Just my clothes and personal items. Everything else can stay with him. I don't want any of it. It's all contaminated with lies. Priya hugged me goodbye. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I can be here in 3 hours. After she left, I sat in my hotel room and opened my laptop. I started drafting a business plan for my new company. Not because I was certain I'd go through with it, but because I needed to think about the future instead of dwelling on the past. I'd spent 5 years supporting Marcus's vision. Now it was time to build my own. The legal battle began in earnest the following week. Marcus and Vanessa hired a high-powered law firm to contest the patent ownership. Their argument was simple. I had made a mistake in filing the patent application, and it should be corrected to list Marcus as a co-inventor. Kenneth dismantled that argument efficiently. He presented evidence that I had created every algorithm, written every line of code, solved every technical problem that made the AI platform work. He showed emails where Marcus asked me basic technical questions, proving he didn't understand the underlying technology well enough to have invented it. The patent office conducted a review and came to the same conclusion. I was the sole inventor, and the patent filing was accurate. Marcus's lawyers then argued that even if I invented the technology, I had done so as part of developing the company, which meant the patent should belong to TechVance Solutions. Kenneth responded with evidence that I was never officially part of the company. No employment contract, no founder's agreement, no equity or ownership stake. Marcus had deliberately excluded me from any formal role in the company while using my work and my money. Your Honor, Kenneth said during a preliminary hearing, Mrs. Foster was systematically exploited by her husband. He took her financial resources, her intellectual property, and her career prospects, all while denying her any official recognition or ownership stake in the company. The defense is now arguing that this exploitation should continue, that Mrs. Foster should be forced to give up her intellectual property rights because she was generous enough to help her husband. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Claire Weatherby, looked skeptical of Marcus's arguments. Mr. Foster, did you ever offer your wife equity in TechVance Solutions? Marcus's attorney answered for him. My client and Mrs. Foster had an understanding that she would benefit from the company's success as his spouse. That's not what I asked. Did he ever offer her formal equity or ownership? No, Your Honor. But did he pay her for her technical contributions to the company? No, Your Honor. But they were married. Spouses often help each other without formal compensation. And did Mr. Foster continue to benefit from his wife's unpaid labor while simultaneously having an extramarital affair with his business partner? Marcus's attorney hesitated. That question wasn't really relevant to the patent dispute, but it painted a damning picture of Marcus's character. Your Honor, my client's personal life I'm establishing pattern of behavior, counselor. Mr. Foster appears to have a habit of using people for his benefit without properly compensating them. First, his wife, whom he exploited for 5 years, and now he wants to continue exploiting her by taking ownership of her intellectual property. I'm not inclined to reward that behavior. Judge Weatherby ruled in my favor on the preliminary motions. The patent was valid, I was the sole owner, and TechVance Solutions would need my permission to continue using the technology. Marcus was devastated. After the hearing, he tried to approach me in the courthouse hallway. Patricia stepped between us. My client has nothing to say to you, Mr. Foster. Please, I just need 5 minutes. Eloise, please. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He appeared to have aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled suit, desperation in every movement. You had 8 years, Marcus. You had thousands of opportunities to treat me with respect, to recognize my contributions, to be honest with me. You didn't. So no, you don't get 5 minutes now. Everything I did for us, for our future. You did it for yourself. And for Vanessa, I was never part of your future. I was just a resource you used until you didn't need me anymore. That's not true. Then why is my name nowhere on the company? Why am I not listed as a founder? Why don't I have any equity? If you really did this for us, where's my share of this future you were supposedly building? He didn't have an answer. That's what I thought, I said, and walked away. Over the next month, the legal situation escalated. TechVance Solutions filed for an emergency injunction, arguing that shutting down their use of the technology would cause irreparable harm to the company and its investors. Judge Weatherby denied the injunction, stating that Marcus and Vanessa should have ensured they had proper rights to the technology before raising $20 million. The investors were furious. 3 of them filed a lawsuit against Marcus and Vanessa personally, claiming fraud and misrepresentation. The Series B funding agreement included warranties that the company owned all its intellectual property. Marcus had signed those warranties knowing they were false. Lighthouse Venture Capital, the lead investor, called me directly. I sent them to Kenneth, but Timothy Brennan was persistent. Dr. Foster, he said when I finally agreed to a brief phone call. I'm not calling to threaten you or pressure you. I'm calling because I think we have aligned interests. How do you figure that? You want Marcus Foster to face consequences for what he did to you. We want to recoup our investment. Right now, TechVance Solutions is worthless without your patent. But if we work together, we could restructure the company in a way that serves both our interests. I'm listening. What if you became CEO? We remove Marcus and Vanessa entirely. You take over the company. You control your own technology. And we protect our investment. It was a tempting offer. Becoming CEO of the company Marcus had built on my work would be poetic justice. I'd be taking over his position, his reputation, everything he'd claimed as his own. But there was a problem. TechVance Solutions is contaminated, I said. The name, the reputation, the company culture, it's all built on Marcus's vision and Vanessa's marketing. Even if I took it over, I'd always be in Marcus's shadow. I'd be the wife who stole her husband's company, instead of the brilliant inventor who built something revolutionary. So you want to start your own company instead? I'm considering it. And what happens to our $20 million? That's between you and Marcus. He made promises he couldn't keep. He took your money under false pretenses. That's his problem, not mine. Dr. Foster, with respect, we could make this very expensive for you. We could tie you up in litigation for years. You could try. But your case against me is weak. I didn't defraud you. Marcus did. And every day you spend fighting me is a day your investment loses value. The tech industry is already talking about how TechVance was built on stolen IP. Even if you win in court, the company's reputation is destroyed. Timothy was quiet for a long moment. What would it take for you to license the patent to TechVance? Name your price. There is no price. I'm not licensing my technology to a company Marcus controls. What if Marcus didn't control it? You mean what if you forced him out? We have provisions in the investment agreement. Material misrepresentation gives us the right to replace management. We could remove Marcus and Vanessa, install new leadership, and rebuild the company from the ground up. And then what? I license my patent to this new version of TechVance? Or we could offer you a substantial equity stake, make you a major shareholder and board member, give you the recognition and ownership you should have had from the beginning. I thought about it. The investors were trying to salvage their investment, which was reasonable. And removing Marcus and Vanessa from the company they'd built on stolen work was appealing. But it still felt like accepting scraps from the table, being given a stake in something that should have been mine all along. I'll think about it, I said. But I'm not making any promises. That's all I ask. Just think about it. After that call, I met with Helen Cortez to discuss the startup option. She'd already drafted term sheets, recruited a preliminary board of advisors, and identified office space in an innovation hub downtown. You're moving fast, I said. I've been doing this for 30 years. When I see opportunity, I move on it. The question is whether you're ready to move with me. I'm not sure I'm ready to be a CEO. I've never run a company. Marcus had never run a company before TechVance. Neither had Vanessa. But they learned, and so will you. The difference is, you actually understand the technology you'll be building a company around. That gives you a huge advantage. What about investors? Who's going to fund a company run by someone with no business experience? I will, for starters. And once word gets out about what Marcus did to you, you'll have investors lining up. The tech industry loves a redemption story. Betrayed wife builds billion-dollar company from stolen patents. That's a headline that writes itself. I don't want to be known as the betrayed wife. I want to be known for my work. Then do work worth being known for. Start the company. Build the technology. Show the world what you're capable of when you're not being held back by someone stealing your credit. That evening, I made my decision. I called Timothy Brennan. Mr. Brennan, I've thought about your offer. And? I'm not licensing the patent to TechVance Solutions, and I'm not joining the company in any capacity. But I am willing to offer you a way to recoup some of your investment. I'm listening. I'm starting my own company. New name, new brand, new culture. But I'll be building on the same foundational technology that makes TechVance valuable. If you'd like to invest in my company, I'll give you preferential terms, a chance to be a lead investor at a favorable valuation. You're asking us to invest in you, instead of trying to save our investment in Marcus? I'm offering you a choice. You can spend the next 2 years fighting legal battles trying to salvage TechVance, which will cost you millions in legal fees and likely end with the company failing anyway. Or you can invest in me, in technology you know works, with a founder who actually understands what she's building. That's a bold ask. It's a fair ask. You made a mistake investing in Marcus. He lied to you. But that doesn't mean you have to lose everything. I'm giving you a second chance to make a smart investment. Timothy was quiet, thinking. How much are you raising? $10 million for the Series A round. Helen Cortez is committing $5 million. I'm offering the other 5 to a select group of investors, including you. At what valuation? $20 million pre-money. So you'd be getting in at less than half of what you valued TechVance at, for technology that's demonstrably more advanced. Because you've been improving it. Because it was always mine to improve. Marcus was frozen at the version I gave him 18 months ago. He didn't understand the technology well enough to develop it further. I've been advancing it continuously. Send me the term sheet. I'll discuss it with my partners. You have 1 week. After that, I'm closing the round and moving forward with other investors. I hung up feeling powerful for the first time in months. I wasn't begging or negotiating or trying to salvage scraps. I was building something new, something mine, something that would make Marcus's company look obsolete by comparison. That night, I moved into my new apartment. It was small, just a 1-bedroom in a modern building downtown. Nothing like the luxury apartment I'd shared with Marcus, which had 3 bedrooms and a view of the river. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture I bought was chosen by me. Every decoration, every dish, every detail reflected my taste instead of being a compromise between my preferences and Marcus's. I set up a home office in the corner of the living room, unpacked my laptops, my books, my research notes, created a space where I could work on my new company, my new future. For the first time in 5 years, I was building something that was completely mine, and it felt incredible. The next 3 months were a blur of activity. I incorporated the new company under the name Quantum Meridian, a name that reflected both my roots at quantum analytics and my vision for reaching new heights in AI technology. Helen connected me with a startup incubator that provided office space, mentorship, and resources. I hired my first employees, two brilliant engineers I'd worked with at Quantum Analytics who jumped at the chance to join me, and a business development manager who'd left TechVance after Marcus's fraud became public knowledge. He was always taking credit for other people's work. The business development manager, a woman named Stephanie Morrison, told me during her interview. I thought it was just standard tech bro behavior, but when I found out what he did to you, everything clicked into place. He's a fraud. Did you work directly with him? Unfortunately, yes. I brought in 3 major clients during my time there. Marcus thanked me privately, but told the board of directors that he'd personally closed those deals. When I asked to be promoted based on my performance, he said I needed to prove myself more. Meanwhile, Vanessa got promoted twice in the same period for doing half the work. Why did you stay? Honestly, because I needed the job. But when the patent fraud came out, I realized I didn't want to work for someone like that anymore, even if it meant being unemployed for a while. I hired her immediately. People who valued integrity over convenience were exactly who I needed on my team. We worked insane hours getting Quantum Meridian ready for launch. I refined the algorithms that formed our core technology, making them faster and more accurate than anything TechVance had. Stephanie reached out to potential clients, many of whom were unhappy with TechVance's service and interested in alternatives, and the investors started lining up. Timothy Brennan's firm, Lighthouse Venture Capital, committed to the full $5 million I'd offered them. 2 other VC firms that had passed on investing in Marcus years ago now wanted in on my company. A tech billionaire who'd made his fortune in AI research called personally to ask if he could invest. I saw what Marcus did to you, he said, and I've seen your work. You're the real deal. Let me know how I can help. Within 6 weeks of incorporating Quantum Meridian, I'd raised $12 million at a $30 million valuation, better terms than I'd originally planned. The tech media covered the story extensively. Dr. Eloise Foster launches Quantum Meridian after patent dispute, reveals husband stole her work. Betrayed wife becomes tech CEO in dramatic reversal. Marcus Foster's fall from grace as wife takes control of technology he claimed as his own. I gave selective interviews, carefully managing the narrative. Yes, Marcus had betrayed me. Yes, he'd stolen my work. But the story wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my career and building something revolutionary. People keep asking me if this is about getting back at my ex-husband, I told one reporter. But I'm not thinking about Marcus Foster anymore. I'm thinking about the future of artificial intelligence. I'm thinking about building a company that pushes the boundaries of what's possible. Marcus is just a footnote in my story, not the main plot. The interviewer smiled. That's quite a dismissal of someone who was once your husband. He dismissed me for 5 years. Turnabout seems fair. That quote went viral. Social media loved it. Number turnabout is fair started trending. Other women shared stories of being underestimated or having their work stolen. I became, somewhat uncomfortably, a symbol of fighting back against betrayal. Marcus, meanwhile, was falling apart publicly. The investors forced him out as CEO of TechVance Solutions. Vanessa tried to maintain control of the company, arguing that she could run it without Marcus, but the investors didn't trust her either. They brought in a new management team and tried to negotiate a licensing deal with me for the patent. I refused. TechVance Solutions limped along for another month, trying to pivot to different technology, but their reputation was destroyed. Clients canceled contracts. Employees quit. The company that had been valued at $80 million 6 months ago was now essentially worthless. Marcus tried to reach out to me several times. I blocked his number. He sent letters through attorneys. I had Patricia send back cease and desist notices. He even showed up at the Quantum Meridian offices once, demanding to see me. Building security escorted him out. He looked terrible, Stephanie told me after the incident. Like he hasn't slept in weeks. That's not my problem. You really don't feel anything for him anymore? I thought about that question. Did I feel anything for Marcus? Anger, yes. Satisfaction at his downfall, certainly. But love? Compassion? Any lingering attachment? No. Those feelings had died the night I found him with Vanessa. What remained was just cold assessment of someone who'd tried to destroy me and failed. He's nothing to me now, I said. Just a lesson in what happens when you underestimate people. 3 months after incorporating Quantum Meridian, we launched our first product, an AI platform that could predict market trends with 97% accuracy, 3% better than what TechVance had claimed. The launch was covered by every major tech publication. Companies that had been using TechVance's platform immediately started calling about switching to ours. Within 2 weeks, we'd signed 15 major clients. The success was validating, but also overwhelming. I'd gone from being Marcus's forgotten wife to being a CEO responsible for a company with 30 employees and millions in revenue. The responsibility was enormous. I worked 16-hour days, learning on the fly how to manage people, how to make strategic business decisions, how to balance innovation with practical business needs. Helen proved invaluable as a mentor, teaching me the unwritten rules of being a CEO that no one tells you in business school. You're doing well, she said during one of our weekly check-in meetings. But you're working too hard. You're going to burn out. I can't afford to burn out. The company needs me. The company needs you healthy and functional, not exhausted and making poor decisions. Delegate more. Trust your team. She was right, of course. I was trying to control everything, still operating from a mindset of having to prove myself worthy. But I'd already proven myself. The company's success was proof enough. I started delegating more, trusting the team I'd built to handle aspects of the business I didn't need to personally oversee. It was hard, letting go of control, but it was necessary. 6 months after launching Quantum Meridian, we raised a Series B round, $30 million at a $120 million valuation. The same investors who'd lost money on TechVance were making it back on my company. You've built something remarkable, Timothy Brennan told me after the funding closed. This is what TechVance should have been from the beginning. TechVance was always going to fail, I said. It was built on lies. You can't sustain a company when the foundation is fraud. Lesson learned. From now on, we're doing much more thorough due diligence on IP ownership. You should have done that in the first place. Agreed. But better late than never. That evening, I was working late at the office when Stephanie knocked on my door. There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Who is it? Vanessa Wright. I considered turning her away. I had nothing to say to Vanessa, no interest in whatever she wanted to discuss. But curiosity won. Fine. Send her in. But stay close in case I need you to escort her out. Vanessa entered my office looking very different from the last time I'd seen her. No designer dress, no confident smile. Just jeans and a plain shirt, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Thank you for seeing me, she said. I haven't decided if I'm seeing you yet. State your business. I came to apologize. You came to apologize, I repeated flatly. 6 months after sleeping with my husband, helping him steal my work, and building a company on fraud. Now you want to apologize. I know it's too late. I know you have no reason to forgive me. But I needed to say it anyway. Why? So you can feel better about yourself? No. So you know that I understand what we did was wrong. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Vanessa looked genuinely remorseful, but I'd seen her act before. She was good at telling people what they wanted to hear. Did Marcus send you? No. Marcus and I aren't together anymore. We broke up 2 months ago. What a surprise! It turns out relationships built on betrayal don't last. You were right about him, Vanessa said quietly. You told me he'd discard me once I wasn't useful anymore. I didn't believe you. But you were right. What happened? Once the company started failing, once the investors forced him out, he blamed me for everything. Said I'd convinced him to exclude you from the company. Said it was my idea to keep the patent filing quiet. He rewrote the whole history to make himself the victim and me the villain. Classic Marcus. I was so stupid. I thought he loved me. I thought we were building something together. But he was just using me like he used you. Actually, no. He didn't use me like he used you. He used me for my money, my work, my intelligence. He used you for sex and companionship. There's a difference. Vanessa flinched. That's fair. Is there a point to this conversation, Vanessa? Because I have work to do. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. For the affair, for helping Marcus steal your credit, for all of it. I was selfish and ambitious, and I convinced myself that what we were doing was okay because Marcus said you didn't care about the company. I didn't care about his company. I cared about my work being recognized and valued. Marcus knew that. He just chose to ignore it because it was more convenient. I should have seen through him. I should have questioned why his supposedly brilliant wife wasn't involved in the supposedly revolutionary company he was building. But I didn't want to see the truth because the lie was more comfortable. I stood up. Vanessa, I appreciate that you came here. I appreciate that you're taking responsibility for what you did. But I don't forgive you. I don't forgive Marcus either. What you both did to me was calculated and cruel. You don't get absolution just because you feel bad about it now. I understand. But I will tell you this. You're young, you're smart, and you still have a chance to build a career on your own merit instead of stealing from other people. Don't waste that chance. Vanessa nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just be better than you were. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, processing that conversation. Vanessa's apology didn't change anything, didn't undo the betrayal, didn't heal the pain, but it was something. An acknowledgement of wrongdoing. A small piece of closure. I didn't need Marcus to apologize. I didn't need his recognition or validation. But having Vanessa admit that they'd been wrong, that I'd been right all along, that felt good. Not as good as Quantum Meridian's success, not as satisfying as building a company that made TechVance look like a joke. But still, it was something. 1 year after leaving Marcus, I received an invitation to speak at the same industry conference where he'd received the Innovation Entrepreneur of the Year award. This year's theme was building ethical tech companies, and I'd been asked to give the keynote address. The irony was delicious. I spent weeks preparing my speech, working with a presentation coach to refine both the content and delivery. This wasn't just about telling my story, it was about establishing myself as a thought leader in the industry, someone whose opinions and insights mattered. The conference was held in the same downtown venue, the same massive hall where I'd stood a year ago watching Marcus accept an award for work I'd done. But this time, I was the one on stage. The room was packed. 1,500 attendees, including most of the major players in the tech industry, venture capitalists, founders, executives, journalists, people who'd watched my story unfold over the past year and wanted to hear what I had to say. I wore a sharp navy suit, simple jewelry, minimal makeup, professional but not flashy. I wanted the focus to be on my words, not my appearance. 1 year ago, I began. I stood in this room watching my husband accept an award for Innovation Entrepreneur of the Year. He was being recognized for developing an AI platform that could predict market trends with unprecedented accuracy. He talked about his vision, his hard work, his brilliant team. He thanked his business partner and co-founder for believing in him from day one. I paused, letting that sink in. What he didn't mention was that I had invented that technology, that I'd written every line of code, developed every algorithm, solved every technical problem that made the platform work. What he didn't mention was that he'd funded the company with my inheritance money. What he didn't mention was that while he was accepting that award, he was having an affair with his co-founder. The room was absolutely silent. I'm not here today to talk about my ex-husband. He's irrelevant to this conversation. I'm here to talk about a systemic problem in the tech industry. We celebrate founders without asking where their innovations actually came from. We invest in charismatic leaders without verifying they own the intellectual property they claim. We reward confidence and salesmanship while overlooking the actual creators doing the real work. I clicked to my first slide, showing statistics on patent disputes in tech. In the past decade, there have been over 3,000 patent disputes involving tech startups. Most of them involve founders claiming ownership of technology created by others, employees, contractors, partners, spouses. The legal battles cost billions of dollars and destroy countless careers. And in most cases, the actual inventors lose because they don't have the resources to fight back. Another slide. Photos of women and minorities who'd had their work stolen by better connected founders. This problem disproportionately affects women and people of color, who are more likely to be excluded from formal ownership structures even when they're doing the critical work. They're told they're helping, they're supporting, they're contributing, but they're not given credit, equity, or recognition. And when they finally speak up, they're dismissed as bitter or vindictive or money-hungry. I had their attention now. People were leaning forward, taking notes, nodding in recognition. I was lucky. I had resources. I had documentation. I had made one critical decision, filing that patent in my own name, that gave me legal leverage. But most people in my situation don't have those advantages. They trust their partners, their co-founders, their employers, and that trust gets exploited. Next slide. A framework for protecting intellectual property rights. So here's what I'm proposing. A new industry standard for IP documentation. Clear, written agreements about who owns what. Regular legal reviews of company ownership structures. Mandatory disclosure of IP sources when raising venture capital. We need to make it harder for frauds like my ex-husband to steal other people's work and claim it as their own. The presentation continued for 45 minutes, laying out specific policy recommendations, legal frameworks, and cultural changes needed to address the problem. I talked about Quantum Meridian's policies, how we documented every employee's contributions, how we fairly allocated equity, how we ensured that credit went to the actual creators of our innovations. Building an ethical tech company isn't just about having good intentions, I concluded. It's about having systems and structures that prevent exploitation even when individual leaders fail to do the right thing. It's about creating a culture where the actual work matters more than who has the best story or the most charisma. 1 year ago, I was invisible, a footnote in someone else's success story. Today, I'm standing here as the CEO of a company that's more successful than the one built on my stolen work. That reversal didn't happen by accident. It happened because I refused to accept being erased. It happened because I fought back legally and strategically. And it happened because enough people in this industry recognized that what was done to me was wrong and chose to support me instead of the fraud who betrayed me. Final slide. The Quantum Meridian logo. I'm not asking for sympathy. I don't need it. I'm asking for systemic change. I'm asking every person in this room to look at their own companies, their own investments, their own business relationships and ask, am I giving credit where it's due? Am I ensuring that the actual creators benefit from their work? Am I building something ethical or just something profitable? Because here's the thing about success built on lies. It's temporary. It crumbles under scrutiny. My ex-husband learned that lesson the hard way. Don't make the same mistake. The applause was immediate and sustained. People stood, which I hadn't expected. I'd given what I thought was a fairly dry policy speech, but apparently it had resonated more than I'd anticipated. Afterward, dozens of people approached me. Founders who wanted to implement similar IP documentation policies, investors who wanted to discuss funding Quantum Meridian's next round, women who'd had their work stolen and wanted advice on how to fight back. You inspired me, one young woman said, tears in her eyes. I've been working for a startup for 3 years. I built their entire platform. But the founder talks about it like it's his idea, his invention. I thought I was crazy for being upset about it. You're not crazy. You're being exploited. Document everything. Get a lawyer. Fight back. Timothy Brennan from Lighthouse Capital found me during the networking reception. That was a powerful speech, he said. You've become quite the advocate. I'm just telling the truth. The industry doesn't like hearing it, but it's necessary. You've changed the conversation. Other VCs are already talking about implementing better IP verification processes. You've made it impossible for us to ignore these issues. Good. Maybe the next woman in my position won't have to fight as hard. Speaking of fighting, have you heard the latest about Marcus? No, and I don't particularly care. He's filed for bankruptcy. Personal bankruptcy. Everything's gone, the apartment, his car, his reputation. Last I heard, he was living with his parents and working at a consulting firm for a fraction of his former salary. I should have felt satisfaction at that news. Marcus had lost everything while I'd gained everything. But mostly, I just felt empty. That's what happens when you build your life on lies, I said. Any regrets about how it all turned out? I thought about that question seriously. Did I regret the last year? The legal battles? The publicity? The months of stress and uncertainty? No, I said finally. I regret the 5 years I wasted supporting someone who didn't deserve it. I regret not seeing who Marcus really was sooner. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret building Quantum Meridian. And I don't regret becoming someone who refuses to be invisible anymore. That evening, I had dinner with Helen, who'd attended my keynote. "You've come a long way," she said over wine and steaks. "A year ago, you were in a hotel room, devastated and angry. Today, you're a respected CEO giving keynote addresses at major conferences. I had good teachers. You, Patricia, Kenneth, you all showed me how to fight back effectively. We gave you tools. You did the actual work. Don't diminish that. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just acknowledging that I couldn't have done this alone. No one ever does anything completely alone. But you were the one who made the decision to fight instead of just walking away. You were the one who filed that patent correctly in the first place. You were the one who documented everything carefully enough to win in court. That was all you." We talked about Quantum Meridian's future, about potential Series C funding in another year, about expanding into new markets and new applications for the AI technology. "What do you want?" Helen asked at one point. "Not what do you think you should want, not what makes strategic sense for the company. What do you actually want?" I thought about that question. What did I want? I want to keep building. I want Quantum Meridian to be successful not just financially, but ethically. I want to prove that you can build a billion-dollar company without exploiting people or stealing credit. I want other women who've been in my situation to see that fighting back is possible. Those are all good goals. But what about personally? What do you want for yourself, separate from the company? "I don't know," I admitted. For so long, everything was about Marcus, supporting him, then fighting him, then building something better than what he stole from me. I haven't really thought about what I want just for me. Then start thinking about it. Because you can't build a fulfilling life if you're only defining yourself in opposition to someone else. Marcus is gone. His company is gone. The threat is gone. Now you need to figure out who you are when you're not fighting. She was right, of course. I'd spent a year in combat mode, building and fighting and proving myself. But now that I'd won, now that Quantum Meridian was successful and my reputation was established, what came next? I didn't have an answer to that question yet, but I was ready to start figuring it out. 18 months after leaving Marcus, Quantum Meridian went public. We'd grown to 150 employees, 40 million in annual revenue, and partnerships with 20 of the Fortune 500 companies. The IPO valued us at $800 million. I owned 35% of the company, which meant my personal net worth was suddenly close to $300 million. Numbers that large felt abstract, unreal. I was still the same person who'd been living in a hotel room 2 years ago, wearing business suits from my quantum analytics days because I couldn't afford new ones. But now I was wealthy. Genuinely wealthy, in a way that would change my life forever. The first thing I did was pay back my inheritance. The $1.5 million I'd given Marcus for his startup had been from my grandmother's estate. Even though she was gone, even though she'd never know, I wanted to honor that money by putting it to good use. I established the Eloise Kensington Foundation for Women in STEM, using my grandmother's maiden name. The foundation would provide grants to women whose intellectual property had been stolen or who needed resources to fight back against workplace exploitation. The second thing I did was hire help, not just assistants and executive coaches, but therapists and advisors who could help me process what I'd been through and figure out what came next. "You've been in survival mode for 2 years," my therapist, Dr. Amanda Brooks, told me during one of our sessions. "You've been fighting and building and proving yourself, but now that the immediate threats are gone, you're going to have to deal with all the emotions you've been suppressing. I thought I'd dealt with them already. I've spent 2 years angry about what Marcus did. Anger is protective. It keeps you focused on fighting instead of feeling. But underneath that anger are other emotions: grief, sadness, loss. You lost 8 years of your life to a relationship that was built on lies. You lost the person you thought Marcus was. You lost your belief that love and trust were safe. So what am I supposed to do about that? Feel it. Process it. Acknowledge that even though you won, even though you built something better, you still lost something valuable. I spent the next few months in therapy twice a week, unpacking everything that had happened. It was harder than the legal battles, harder than building the company, harder than any of the external fights I'd won. Because this wasn't about strategy or intelligence or preparation. This was about accepting that I'd been hurt, deeply hurt, by someone I'd trusted. And that even though I'd gotten justice and success and vindication, that hurt didn't just disappear. I dreamed about Marcus sometimes. Not the real Marcus who'd betrayed me, but the version I'd thought he was in those early years of our marriage. The charming, ambitious man I'd fallen in love with. In the dreams, I'd warn him, tell him not to make the choices that would destroy us. But he never listened, and I'd wake up feeling the loss all over again. "You're grieving, Doctor," Brooks told me. "Not for Marcus as he actually was, but for the relationship you thought you had. That's normal. That's healthy. It doesn't feel healthy. It feels weak. Grief isn't weakness. It's acknowledgement of what mattered to you. You can be strong and still grieve what you've lost." Work continued to be demanding. As CEO of a now public company, I had new responsibilities: quarterly earnings calls, board meetings with shareholders, media interviews about Quantum Meridian's growth trajectory. The pressure was enormous, and I sometimes missed the early days when the company was just me and a few engineers working out of a startup incubator. But I'd learned to delegate. My executive team was strong people I trusted to make good decisions without constant oversight. Stephanie had been promoted to Chief Operations Officer. The 2 engineers I'd hired at the beginning were now leading their own development teams. I'd brought in an experienced CFO to handle the financial complexities of being a public company. "You're doing well," Helen told me during one of our now monthly dinners. "Better than most first-time CEOs who take their companies public. I'm barely keeping my head above water. That's how it feels for everyone. The trick is not letting them see that." "Is this what you wanted?" I asked. "When you invested in me? When you pushed me to start the company, is this the outcome you envisioned?" Helen smiled. "I envisioned you being successful. The specifics have exceeded my expectations. But Eloise, I want to ask you something. Are you happy?" It was the second time someone had asked me that question in recent months, and I still didn't have a good answer. "I'm satisfied," I said carefully. "I've built something meaningful. I've provided justice for myself and hopefully inspiration for other women in similar situations. The company is successful. What more could I want? Joy, connection, a life outside of work, love, maybe. I'm not ready for love. I don't know if I'll ever be ready for that again." "That's understandable. But you should at least be open to the possibility. You're 41 years old, Eloise. You have decades ahead of you. Don't spend them alone just because one man betrayed you." I thought about that conversation for weeks. Was I spending my life alone as punishment for Marcus's betrayal? Or was I genuinely content with the life I'd built? I'd thrown myself into work so completely that I hadn't left room for much else. I had colleagues, but few friends. I attended industry events, but rarely socialized. I lived in a beautiful apartment, but spent most of my time at the office. I was successful but isolated. Accomplished but lonely. One evening, I went back to my old volunteer teaching position at a community college. Before Marcus, before everything fell apart, I used to teach an evening class on computer science fundamentals. I'd loved it, the interaction with students, the satisfaction of helping people understand complex concepts, the reminder that technology was meant to serve people, not just make profits. I'd quit when Marcus asked me to focus on supporting his business. Now I wanted to try again. The department chair was thrilled to have me back. "Dr. Foster, or should I say, CEO Foster, we'd be honored if you'd teach for us again. Just Dr. Foster is fine. Or Eloise. And I'd like to teach the same introductory course I used to, if possible." "You don't want to teach something more advanced? Given your expertise?" "No. I want to teach beginners. I want to help people who think computer science is too complicated or too intimidating. That's where I can make the most difference." I started teaching Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 2 hours per session. The class was full of people returning to education after years in other careers, people trying to transition into tech, people who'd been told they weren't smart enough for STEM but were determined to prove otherwise. It reminded me why I'd fallen in love with technology in the first place. Not for the money or the prestige or the power, for the pure intellectual satisfaction of solving problems and creating systems that made the world work better. One of my students, a woman in her 50s named Carolyn, approached me after class one evening. "Dr. Foster, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. I read about what happened with your husband, about how he stole your work. I'm going through something similar right now. My business partner is trying to push me out of a company I co-founded. And I just wanted to know, how did you find the strength to fight back?" I thought about how to answer that. I stopped thinking of it as strength. I started thinking of it as necessity. I had to fight back because the alternative was accepting that someone could take everything from me without consequences. I had to fight back because staying silent would have meant he won. But weren't you scared? Of losing? Of making things worse? Terrified. Every day. But I was more scared of looking back in 10 years and regretting that I didn't even try. So I documented everything, hired good lawyers, and prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Did you ever forgive him? That question caught me off guard. I don't think about Marcus enough to forgive or not forgive him. He's just not relevant to my life anymore. But you were married for 8 years. Doesn't that mean something? It meant something at the time. Now it's just history. Not good history, not bad history. Just something that happened that led me to where I am now. After class, I walked through the campus, remembering my own graduate school days. The late nights in the lab, the excitement of breakthrough moments, the community of other researchers who understood the obsessive focus required for serious work. I missed that. Not the specific time period, but the feeling of being part of something larger than myself, of working toward knowledge for its own sake, not just for profit or success. I called Helen when I got home. "I'm thinking about going back to research." "Research? While running a public company?" "Not full-time research, but something. Maybe funding a lab at a university. Maybe establishing a research division within Quantum Meridian that's focused on pure science instead of commercial applications. That's not a bad idea, actually. It could be good for the company's reputation. Shows you're serious about advancing the field, not just making money. I don't care about the company's reputation. I care about doing meaningful work. Those things aren't mutually exclusive." She was right, of course. Over the next few months, I worked with my team to establish Quantum Meridian Labs, a research division that would focus on advancing AI technology, whether or not the work had immediate commercial applications. We hired researchers, partnered with universities, created fellowship programs for graduate students. It was expensive and wouldn't generate revenue for years, if ever. But it felt right. It felt like the kind of company I should be building, one that valued knowledge and innovation for their own sake, not just as means to profit. 2 years after leaving Marcus, I ran into him accidentally at a coffee shop near my apartment. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, laughing at something she said, looking relaxed and happy, in a way I hadn't seen in years. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. The laughter died, replaced by something complicated: guilt, shame, regret, anger, all of it flashing across his face in the span of a second before he settled on a neutral expression. "Eloise," he said. "Marcus." We stared at each other for a moment. 8 years of marriage and 2 years of warfare compressed into an awkward silence in a crowded coffee shop. "This is Emily," he said finally, gesturing to the woman beside him. "Emily, this is Eloise, your ex-wife," Emily said, extending her hand. "I've heard a lot about you." "I'm sure you have," I said, shaking her hand. "Nice to meet you." More awkward silence. "You look well," Marcus said. "I saw the news about Quantum Meridian going public." "Congratulations, thank you. I always knew you were brilliant. I'm sorry I didn't appreciate it properly when we were together." I looked at him. This man who'd once been the center of my world. He looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper, his hair graying at the temples. But he also looked peaceful, less driven and desperate than he'd been during our marriage. "Are you happy?" I asked. The question seemed to surprise him. "I am, actually. It took a while. After everything fell apart, after the bankruptcy and the humiliation, I thought my life was over. But Emily helped me realize that maybe losing everything was what I needed. I was building a life on lies and stolen work. That was never going to make me happy. So you're better now. I'm honest now. I'm working a regular job, making decent money, not trying to be a tech mogul anymore. It's simpler. Better. Good. I'm glad you found something real. Are you?" His eyes searched mine. "Glad, I mean. Or do you wish I was still suffering?" I thought about that question. Did I wish Marcus was suffering? Did his apparent happiness and recovery diminish my victory somehow? "No," I said, surprising myself with the sincerity. "I don't wish you were suffering. What you did to me was wrong, and you deserve to face consequences for it. But I don't need you to be miserable forever. I just need you to be out of my life. I am. I won't bother you again." "I appreciate that." I got my coffee and left, feeling strange about the encounter. I'd expected to feel anger or vindication or something strong. Instead, I just felt neutral. Marcus was someone I used to know, someone who'd hurt me, someone who'd paid the price for that hurt. But he wasn't my enemy anymore. He was just a person living his own life, separate from mine. That evening, Dr. Brooks asked me about the encounter during our therapy session. How did it feel, seeing him happy with someone else? Honestly, it felt like closure, like the final chapter of that story ending. Are you ready to write a new story? What kind of story? Whatever kind you want. You've spent 2 years rebuilding your career and proving yourself. But there's more to life than work, Eloise. There's friendship, love, joy. You deserve those things too. I have work that matters. I have a foundation helping women. I have students who benefit from my teaching. Isn't that enough? Only you can answer that. But I'd ask you to consider, are you avoiding personal relationships because you're genuinely content alone? Or because you're still afraid of being hurt again? That question haunted me. Was I avoiding relationships out of strength or fear? Was I genuinely happy with my isolated life? Or was I just protecting myself from potential pain? I didn't have an answer. But for the first time in 2 years, I was ready to start looking for one. 3 years after leaving Marcus, I met someone. Her name was Dr. Claire Sutherland, and she was a professor of artificial intelligence ethics at MIT. We met at an academic conference where we were both speaking, bonded over a shared frustration with how the tech industry prioritized profit over societal impact, and exchanged contact information. At first, it was just professional. We emailed about research, collaborated on a paper about ethical frameworks for AI development, occasionally grabbed coffee when we were in the same city for conferences. But gradually, it became something more. Claire was brilliant not just technically, but philosophically. She thought deeply about questions I'd never considered. What responsibilities do AI developers have to society? How do we ensure technology serves humanity instead of exploiting it? What does it mean to build ethical systems in an industry that rewards shortcuts? She was also kind, funny, and refreshingly direct. When I tried to deflect personal questions, she called me out on it. When I worked too many hours, she showed up at my office with takeout and forced me to take a break. When I started spiraling into self-doubt about whether I was a good CEO, she reminded me of everything I'd accomplished. "You're being ridiculous," she said one evening when I was questioning every decision I'd made in the past 6 months. "You built a successful company from the ruins of your marriage. You've changed industry practices around IP documentation. You're teaching a new generation of computer scientists. What more do you need to do to prove you're good enough?" "I don't know. I just feel like I'm still trying to make up for lost time. Like I'm still trying to prove that leaving my research career wasn't a waste. It wasn't a waste. You used that time to learn painful lessons about trust and betrayal. Those lessons informed how you built Quantum Meridian with integrity and proper credit allocation. You couldn't have built the ethical company you did if you hadn't experienced an unethical one first." She was right, of course. But it was hard to shake the feeling that I'd lost 5 years I couldn't get back. Do you ever regret it? Claire asked. The marriage, I mean. Do you wish you'd never met Marcus? I used to wish that. In the beginning, when everything was fresh and painful, I wished I could erase him from my history entirely. But now, I don't know. If I'd never married Marcus, I wouldn't have built Quantum Meridian. I'd still be at Quantum Analytics, doing good work but not particularly remarkable work. The betrayal forced me to become someone stronger than I would have been otherwise. That's a very mature perspective. I've had a lot of therapy. Claire laughed. Haven't we all? Our relationship progressed slowly. Neither of us was in a rush. Both of us scarred by previous experiences. Claire had been divorced for 6 years from a husband who'd resented her career success. She understood the complexity of building a partnership when both people were accomplished and independent. I don't need to be saved, she told me early on. I don't need to be supported or taken care of. I need a partner who can match me intellectually and challenge me to be better. Can you do that? I can try. Then let's try together. We dated for 6 months before making it official, before telling friends and family that we were actually in a relationship. I was terrified of going public, of exposing myself to potential judgment or speculation about my sexuality, or concerns that I was moving on too quickly. But Claire was patient. She let me move at my own pace, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. I'm not Marcus, she reminded me whenever I started pulling away. I'm not going to betray you or steal from you or make you feel small. I'm just going to love you and be your partner for as long as you want me to be. The tech media eventually found out about our relationship. Quantum Meridian's CEO dating MIT professor ran as a headline in several publications, accompanied by speculation about whether this was a purely professional partnership or something romantic. I issued a brief statement. Dr. Sutherland and I are in a relationship. It's personal, it's private, and it has nothing to do with Quantum Meridian's business operations. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. Most people respected that boundary. A few didn't, publishing op-eds about whether two successful women dating each other was good for representation or confusing for the industry. I ignored them all. What mattered was that Claire made me happy. Really happy. In a way I hadn't been since before my marriage to Marcus fell apart. She challenged me intellectually, supported me emotionally, and made me laugh when work got too serious. You're different, Helen observed during one of our dinners. Lighter. More present. Claire's good for me. She is. But also, you're good for you now. You've done the work to heal from Marcus, to build a life that's genuinely yours. Claire is just a bonus. That was true. Even if Claire and I didn't work out, though I hoped desperately that we would, I'd still have built a life I was proud of. I'd still have Quantum Meridian. My teaching, my foundation, my research lab. I'd still have work that mattered and values I believed in. The relationship wasn't a fix for loneliness or validation that I was worthy of love. It was just two people who liked each other, respected each other, and wanted to build something together. 4 years after leaving Marcus, Quantum Meridian's valuation hit $2 billion. We'd expanded into new markets, developed new applications for the AI technology, built partnerships with governments and NGOs to use our platform for social good. I'd been CEO for 4 years, and while I loved the work, I was also ready to step back slightly. I promoted Stephanie to CEO, maintaining my position as executive chair. This gave her the day-to-day operational control, while allowing me to focus on longer-term strategy and research. Are you sure about this? Stephanie asked when I offered her the promotion. You built this company. It's yours. I built it, yes, but it's not mine alone. It belongs to everyone who's contributed to it. And honestly, I'm better suited to strategy and innovation than operations management. You're better at the CEO role than I am. I don't know about that. I do. You're organized, decisive, and people genuinely like working for you. I'm brilliant but abrasive. Those are different skill sets, and the company needs yours right now more than mine. Stephanie accepted the role and proved to be an excellent CEO. Under her leadership, Quantum Meridian continued to grow while maintaining the ethical standards I'd established. She implemented new programs for employee development, expanded our commitment to diversity and inclusion, and built partnerships that aligned with our values. I focused on Quantum Meridian Labs, the research division. We'd made genuine breakthroughs in AI ethics and safety, publishing papers that were being cited across the industry. The work was pure and satisfying in a way that business operations never quite managed to be. Claire and I moved in together, buying a house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, optimistic planning for a future we hoped to build together. We talked about maybe adopting children someday, about balancing our careers with family, about what we wanted our life to look like in 10 years. "I want to keep doing meaningful work," I told her one evening as we cooked dinner together. "But I also want to have a life. I wasted too many years making work my entire identity. Work is part of your identity. Just not all of it. What's the rest? Partner, teacher, researcher, friend, hopefully parent someday. Person who makes excellent pasta sauce." I laughed. "That last one is questionable? The sauce is good. You're just a perfectionist." We ate dinner on our back porch, watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. It was peaceful, normal. The kind of evening I'd never been able to have with Marcus because he was always working, always networking, always chasing the next big thing. "Do you ever think about him?" Claire asked. "Marcus? Sometimes. Not often anymore. Usually just when something reminds me of how different my life is now. Better or just different? Better. Definitely better. Even though the path here was painful, I'm glad I ended up where I am. With me? Especially with you." 5 years after leaving Marcus, I received an unexpected email from Vanessa. She'd finished a degree in business ethics and was working for a nonprofit that helped survivors of workplace exploitation. "I wanted to update you," the email read, "not because I think you care about me, but because I wanted you to know that I took your advice. I'm trying to be better than I was. I'm helping other people who've been in situations like yours. It doesn't make up for what I did, but it's something." I replied briefly, "I'm glad you found meaningful work. Good luck." That was all the closure I needed with Vanessa. She'd made mistakes, paid consequences, and was trying to do better. That was enough. Marcus, I heard through various connections, had remarried. He was still working a regular job, had 2 young children, seemed to be building a genuine life instead of a performance. I hoped he'd learned his lessons. I hoped he was treating his new wife better than he'd treated me. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. "You've really moved on, Doctor," Brooks observed during one of our now quarterly check-in sessions. "When you first came to me, you were consumed with anger and planning revenge. Now you barely think about Marcus or what happened. Is that healthy? Or am I just suppressing it? It's healthy. You processed the anger, executed your plan, built a new life, and genuinely moved forward. That's not suppression, that's healing. So I'm healed? You're always healing. That's what life is. But yes, you've moved through the acute trauma and reached a place of sustainable wellness. You don't need therapy anymore if you don't want it. I think I'll keep coming occasionally. It's helpful to have someone to talk to who isn't Claire or Helen or Stephanie. I'm happy to continue seeing you. But Eloise, you should be proud of yourself. You survived something that destroys a lot of people. And you didn't just survive, you thrived. I left that session feeling lighter than I had in years. The past no longer felt like a weight I was carrying. It was just the past. Something that had happened, something I'd learned from, something that had shaped me, but didn't define me. 6 years after leaving Marcus, Claire proposed. We were on vacation in Scotland, hiking through the Highlands, surrounded by dramatic landscapes and ancient history. She got down on one knee on top of a mountain, pulled out a ring, and asked if I'd marry her. I said yes immediately. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony in our backyard. Just close friends and family. Priya, Helen, Stephanie, my parents, Claire's parents, colleagues who'd become friends. Nothing ostentatious, nothing designed to impress. Just people we loved celebrating our commitment to each other. "I'm glad you found this," my mother said during the reception. "After everything you went through with Marcus, I worried you'd close yourself off forever." "I almost did," I admitted. But Claire was patient with me. She let me heal on my own timeline. That's what real love looks like. Not the performance you had with Marcus, but genuine partnership. My father, who'd always been quiet and practical, pulled me aside later. "Your grandmother would be proud of you," he said. Not just for the business success, but for having the courage to fight back when you were wronged. She was fierce like that, too. I wish she'd been alive to see it. She saw enough. She knew you'd be okay. That's why she left you that money she trusted you, to use it wisely. I gave half of it to Marcus for his startup. And then you took it back tenfold. That's wisdom right there. The reception was joyful, full of laughter and dancing and genuine celebration. So different from my wedding to Marcus, which had been formal and traditional and somehow hollow despite all the expensive decorations and carefully curated details. To Eloise and Claire, Helen toasted. To finding love after betrayal, success after exploitation, and joy after grief. You've earned every bit of happiness you have. We honeymooned in New Zealand, taking 2 weeks completely off from work, something I hadn't done since starting Quantum Meridian. It felt strange at first, not checking emails constantly, not thinking about company strategy or research problems. But gradually, I learned to be present, to enjoy the landscapes and activities, and simple pleasure of spending time with Claire without any other obligations. This is nice, I said one evening as we watched the sun set over Lake Taupo. Being married? Being at peace. For years, I was either supporting Marcus's dreams or fighting against his betrayal or building my own company in opposition to what he'd stolen. I was always moving toward or away from something. This is the first time I felt like I could just be still. You deserve stillness. You've earned it. Have I? Sometimes I still feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like this, happiness is temporary and something will come along to destroy it. That's trauma talking. Marcus betrayed you, so part of your brain thinks everyone will eventually betray you. But Eloise, I'm not Marcus. I'm not going to steal your work, or sleep with someone else, or systematically undermine you. I'm just going to love you and build a life with you. That's it. Promise? Promise. We came back from our honeymoon to news that Quantum Meridian had been named one of the most ethical companies in America by a major business publication. The article highlighted our IP documentation practices, our commitment to fair compensation for all contributors, our research lab that prioritized knowledge over profit. You've created something remarkable, the article's author wrote. Not just a successful company, but a model for how tech companies should operate. Quantum Meridian proves that ethics and profitability aren't mutually exclusive. I gave an interview about the recognition. Building an ethical company isn't complicated, I said. You just have to actually care about people more than you care about looking successful. You have to give credit where it's due, compensate people fairly, and be honest about where your innovations come from. The fact that this is considered remarkable shows how low the bar has fallen in our industry. But you've raised that bar, the interviewer said. I hope so. That was always the goal, not just to succeed personally, but to change the conversation about what success should look like. 7 years after leaving Marcus, Claire and I adopted a daughter. We named her Audrey, after my grandmother, the woman whose inheritance had funded both Marcus's failed fraud and my successful comeback. Motherhood was harder than I expected. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, the feeling of being responsible for another person's entire life. But it was also more fulfilling than any business success I'd achieved. She's perfect, Claire said, holding Audrey in the hospital room after we'd completed the adoption process. We made a family. We did. I reduced my hours at work even further, wanting to be present for Audrey's early years in a way I might not be able to later. Stephanie was more than capable of running Quantum Meridian, and the research lab had developed its own rhythm under the leadership of the scientists I'd hired. You're really doing it, Helen observed when she visited to meet Audrey. Living a balanced life. I'm impressed. It's harder than building a billion-dollar company. Most things worth doing are hard. But look at you, successful CEO, ethical business leader, happily married, new parent, still teaching and researching. You're living proof that women can have it all. Just not all at the exact same time. I thought about that phrase, having it all. For so many years, I thought having it all meant being successful in my career while supporting a husband and maintaining a perfect home life. I tried to be everything to everyone, and in the process, I'd lost myself. Now I understood that having it all meant defining what mattered to me personally and building a life around those priorities. It meant work I found meaningful, relationships I valued, time for things that brought me joy. Not perfect balance every day, but overall alignment between my values and my choices. 8 years after leaving Marcus, I was invited to give a TED Talk about my journey. I almost declined. The story felt old now, something I'd moved past. But my publicist convinced me that sharing it could help other women in similar situations. "You have a platform," she said. "Use it to help people." So I accepted. The talk was titled Reclaiming Your Life: From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I told the story honestly. The years of supporting Marcus, the discovery of his betrayal, the strategic decision to document everything and fight back legally, the founding of Quantum Meridian, the battle to reclaim my patent, the eventual success. But I also talked about the harder parts, the loneliness during those months of preparation, the fear that I'd lose everything if my plan failed, the therapy I'd needed to process the trauma, the difficulty of learning to trust again. "People think revenge is simple," I said near the end of the talk. "You're wronged, you fight back, you win, and everything is better. But real life is more complicated than that. Yes, I won legally. Yes, I built a successful company. Yes, I got justice. But I also had to rebuild myself from the ground up. I had to learn who I was separate from the role of supportive wife. I had to figure out what I wanted instead of what someone else wanted for me. The revenge was satisfying. The success was validating. But the real victory was becoming someone who didn't need revenge or external validation to feel whole. Someone who could build a life based on my own values and priorities. Someone who could love and trust again despite being betrayed. If you're in a situation like I was, if someone is stealing your work, exploiting your talents, betraying your trust, here's what I want you to know. You deserve better. You are capable of more than you think. And fighting back isn't selfish or vindictive, it's self-preservation. It's reclaiming what's yours. But also know that fighting back is just the beginning. The real work comes after. When you have to figure out who you are when you're not defined by someone else's expectations or betrayals. That work is harder and longer and less dramatic than the initial fight. But it's also more important. Because at the end of the day, revenge might make you feel powerful temporarily, but building a genuine life makes you feel fulfilled permanently. And fulfillment is worth more than any amount of vindication. The talk went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments from women sharing their own stories of betrayal and recovery. I received emails from people who'd been inspired to fight back against exploitation, to start their own companies, to stop accepting less than they deserved. It was overwhelming but also deeply satisfying. The pain I'd experienced had been transformed into something that helped others. That felt like true justice, not just personal vindication, but systemic impact. 9 years after leaving Marcus, I was featured on the cover of a major business magazine as one of the most influential CEOs of the decade. The article detailed my journey from unknown researcher to respected industry leader, highlighting Quantum Meridian's success and my advocacy for ethical business practices. But what I was most proud of was a smaller article in an academic journal about the research coming out of Quantum Meridian Labs. We'd made genuine contributions to AI safety and ethics, work that would benefit society long after the company itself was gone. "This is your real legacy," Claire said, reading the academic article. "Not the business success or the revenge story, but the actual advancement of knowledge. You think so? I know so. The revenge was necessary, I'm not minimizing that. But this work, this research, this is what will last. This is what will matter in 50 years when people have forgotten about Marcus and TechVance and all the drama." She was right, as usual. The story of my betrayal and comeback would eventually fade, become just another cautionary tale in the tech industry's history. But the research, the ethical frameworks we developed, the model we created for how to run a company with integrity, those would persist. 10 years after leaving Marcus, I received one final message from him. A handwritten letter, mailed to Quantum Meridian's headquarters, forwarded to me by my assistant. "Dear Eloise," it read, "I know I have no right to contact you. You made it clear years ago that you wanted nothing to do with me, and I've respected that boundary. But I'm writing now not to ask for forgiveness or to try to explain myself, but simply to acknowledge what I did and what you accomplished despite it. I stole from you. I exploited your trust, your work, your resources. I told myself I was building something for both of us, but I was really just building something for myself at your expense. That was wrong. It was cruel and selfish and indefensible. What you did afterward, the way you fought back, reclaimed your work, built Quantum Meridian that was extraordinary. Not just smart or strategic, but genuinely inspiring. You took the worst thing that had happened to you and transformed it into something remarkable. I'm not asking for acknowledgement or response. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I couldn't understand then. You were always the brilliant one, the innovative one, the one with real vision. I was just good at taking credit and telling stories. You deserved better than me, and I'm glad you found it. I hope you're happy. From what I read in the news, it seems like you are. You deserve every bit of that happiness. Marcus I read the letter twice, then filed it away without responding. There was nothing to say. Marcus's acknowledgement of his wrongdoing didn't change anything, didn't undo the pain, didn't make the betrayal acceptable, didn't earn him forgiveness. But it was a period at the end of a sentence, the final closing of a chapter I'd moved past years ago. That evening, I told Claire about the letter. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like closing a book I'd already finished reading. The ending doesn't change just because you read the acknowledgements page. Do you forgive him?" I thought about that question seriously. I don't think forgiveness is the right word. I don't feel angry at him anymore, but that's not the same as forgiveness. I just feel done. His actions are in the past, their consequences have been addressed, and I've moved on completely. Whether I forgive him or not is irrelevant because he's irrelevant. That's probably the healthiest possible outcome. Dr. Brooks would be proud. We spent the evening playing with Audrey, reading her stories, getting her ready for bed. This was my life now, not fighting or building or proving, just living. Being present with people I loved, doing work I found meaningful, enjoying simple pleasures without always planning the next move. I thought about who I'd been 10 years ago, a woman who'd given up her career to support her husband, who'd believed that love meant sacrifice, who'd thought success was about helping someone else shine. And I thought about who I was now, a CEO who'd built an ethical company, a researcher advancing important knowledge, a teacher helping the next generation, a wife and mother building a family based on genuine partnership and respect. The journey between those two versions of myself had been painful, exhausting, sometimes terrifying, but I wouldn't trade it, because the woman I'd become was worth every difficult step of the path. The revenge had been necessary. The legal battles had been justified. The success of Quantum Meridian had been satisfying. But the real victory was simpler and more profound. I'd reclaimed myself. I'd taken back my voice, my work, my identity. I'd stopped being someone's supportive wife and become my own person with my own dreams and my own definition of success. That was the story I wanted people to remember. Not woman gets revenge on cheating husband, but woman rediscovers herself after years of being diminished. Because at the end of the day, Marcus hadn't just stolen my intellectual property or my money. He'd tried to steal my sense of self, my belief in my own capabilities, my confidence that I deserved recognition and respect. And I'd taken all of that back. Not through revenge, though that had been satisfying. Not through success, though that had been validating. But through the slow, difficult, essential work of rebuilding my life according to my own values and priorities, of learning to trust myself again, of accepting that being betrayed didn't make me weak or foolish, it just made me human. 10 years after leaving Marcus, I was finally, completely, thoroughly at peace. And that peace felt like the greatest achievement of all.